Welcome back, everyone, for another edition of the Fantasy Slant. Today, we have two very special guests, Jason Baumgardner and Scott Hanson of the movie The Perfect Lineup, a very DFS-heavy lineup, or movie, I should say. So plenty of our listeners, I think, will be very entertained, very informed by it. So first of all, how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Jason, let's start with you. So you're the filmmaker, you're the person behind this movie. Why did you pick this subject, and what sort of drew you to it?
Well, I've been playing fantasy season long for 15 years or so, and I'd been in the film industry. I'd been working on a documentary about video games, and when that was over, I was getting into fantasy sports again, and came across DFS, started listening to the guys over at Rotor Grinders, and I just kind of realized, wow, this is a really niche part of the fantasy sports world that I didn't know about, and if I didn't know about it, a lot of other people didn't. And being a filmmaker and just kind of wanting to latch onto something next, I was like, why not try and tell this story before anyone else tells it? So I just reached out to FanDuel, and they were open to me coming to their live final at the end of 2014, their football live final. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So it was just an industry that I love, and being a filmmaker, I just tried to combine the two, really.
Well, yeah, in that event, Scott, our other guest, featured heavily in that. But we'll get to that in a moment, Scott. We'll get to your big story on that. But so, Jason, for you, what? I guess let's just jump right in. How long did it take you to make this film? And the broader question, what kind of changes did you see from when you first started and first diving into this world to now? What most surprised you, I guess?
Well, I'd probably say the biggest change for me as a filmmaker was the audience changed. When I started getting into the movie in October of 2014, it was still very niche. Not a lot of people knew about it. So I kind of wanted to bring it to light. And then as the film kind of unfolded and I got to tell different stories, but from players' point of view, the site point of view, content provider point of view, and then kind of right when I was planning on wrapping up, I did one full year of DFS. So I did football, I did basketball, I did baseball, a little bit of hockey, and right about when I was done filming, about October of last year, that's when kind of all the news and controversy and everything came out. So it shifted in a sense that I didn't have to explain to everyone what DFS was anymore. I was more like, here's from an insider point of view, Yeah. So it's kind of like I had the point of view that the news outlets don't have. So I feel like I'm telling the story from players, from people who are in the industry every single day, and the news just doesn't have the time or energy or the ability just to do that constantly.
Well, and actually that brings up another question. Did that sort of change how you made the movie? Like you just said, there was a lot of stuff that came out that sort of did a lot of explaining for you. So did that kind of alter, the message of the movie or the theme or the track you were on with that?
It kind of helped actually because I guess the movie kind of starts out with some news footage and things like that. So it's kind of gave me the first step of just like, okay, remember these commercials? Okay, now here's the movie behind the commercials.
Right.
So that's kind of how it kind of helped just be like, okay, it gets people familiar with, oh, this is what I'm watching again. And then, but as far as, something I was most surprised by is just, how really down to earth everybody in this industry is and just wants to help each other, and everyone wants to just kind of be a part of everything else going on, and, strategy and friendships. And it was just kind of like I'd interview one person, then they'd pass me up to the next person, say, hey, they'd love to be in this too, probably. So just a really cool community that I hope the film kind of brings to light as well.
Well, and that sort of leads to my next question is, how did you and Scott hook up? Because obviously Scott plays a pretty big part in the movie there, at least in the trailer too. So how did you get hooked up with Scott?
That was just really just a fortuitous moment, because I went to the FanDuel Live Final in 2014 and didn't know anyone. Actually, one of the guys on our crew was best friends with another guy that was a competitor there, and they were across the country, and so that was like our one person that we knew that was qualified to be there. And we just interviewed as many people as we could and just kind of started following stories. And some people are really open to you talking to them, and some people are just like they don't want to talk, or some people talk a little bit. But everyone's there kind of to compete, so it's like they're focused on what they're doing. So And Scott and Danny both, they were just super like excited about talking about their story and who they were, and so the outcome of that event, and they were just open to doing some more. And so luckily they lived just down the road from me, so we were able to connect quite a few times.
Yeah, so Scott, let's turn to you. You had a pretty exciting time at that final event, didn't you?
Oh, definitely. It was pretty awesome. It kind of felt like a dream.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you've got kind of a storybook ending to that. You started with what, $35, and then you turned it into what? What was the final payout?
It was $2 million for that live final, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I started, I only had deposited a total of 35, and my first 2 weeks I didn't really win anything. I really just kind of put in lineups. I didn't focus that much, and then my third week I decided, I think I want to put a little more into this and just dig a little deeper into the stats. And so I looked at some of the stuff on Pro Football Focus because actually, I used to work for you guys, and I had done some analysis there, and I really liked the grading and the advanced stats, and I felt like they could potentially give an edge. And so I used a few of the players that I thought would do well based on early grades during that season. And just a couple other plays where I felt like the guys were kind of due to regress to the mean because they had a couple of bad games in a row. And in my third week, all I had was one $5 entry, and it won $15,000. And so from there on, all of a sudden, it was like, okay, well, maybe I should take this a little bit more seriously. I'll get into this a little bit more. So it was pretty crazy. I mean, that first day where I had that happen, I wasn't even paying attention to my lineup for the first half of the games. And then all of a sudden, I was just kind of thinking about it. I was looking at like my season-long team, and then I was thinking, wait a minute, I feel like my daily team might be doing really well right now. I've just seen that a couple of players had long touchdowns, and I looked at it, and I was in 5th place out of like 57,000, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I need to just keep watching this.
Yeah.
And so, it kept going up, and it ended up finishing first that week. And, I found out actually that had I put that same lineup in the $25 lineup, it would have won that, and it would have won $150,000 for that same week if I would have done that. So,
see, and that's what they tell you, Scott. You just got to go bigger, man.
Yeah. So, I figured, okay, I should probably, put a few more lineups into this and, put some more time into it, maybe develop a projection model. So over the next few weeks, I got into that a little bit more. And it was about a month later that I ended up qualifying. And so it was another just crazy day because I ended up winning that qualifier, and that was out of like 59,000 different entries. So I had more than one in that. I had around 30 entries, but I had a couple that really went off, and one of them ended up winning it, and that's what ended up getting me to the live final. And from there, you only had to beat out 100 people, so
right.
It was a little better.
$2 million, like no big deal. So you probably remember the lineup you had for that final, right? I would imagine like you bought the jersey of every single player on that team.
I was going to. I actually haven't bought the jerseys, but
God, and you can't say money's a factor, man. Come on now.
No, yeah, it's a good point. But
I want it to be a quill. I want someone to make it into a quill.
Yeah.
Under it at night.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember all the players in the lineup. I could probably remember even the ownership percentages of most of them too.
Yeah. Well, no, but who? I mean, I'm curious. Who was in the lineup that particular? Was it week 16 that they had the final then?
I believe it was week 15.
Okay.
And so it was a week where Cam Newton was out, and it was like he was known to be out at the very beginning of the week, and Derek Anderson filled in for him. So I had him locked into my lineup all week because he was a minimum price quarterback against, right. I think we were playing Tampa Bay, so it wasn't like a great pass defense. So, he was pretty much a lock to hit solid value, and the other quarterback options weren't all that great that week. So that was a kind of a no-brainer for me.
It was Manziel's coming out party, so a lot of people got on Manziel
that
day. Yeah.
Like, thank God you didn't go that route, Scott.
Actually, so I kind of went the opposite route, and that was the thing that really helped me. is I was not high on Manziel at all. I just really thought he wasn't all that disciplined in the way that he played, and I felt like he was going to turn the ball over multiple times, and that's kind of what ended up happening. So I took Jeremy Hill thinking he might get goal line carries, so if Manziel turns the ball over in his own territory, that could give Hill increased opportunity. Plus, there was news earlier in the week that he was going to get an increased workload. So he just seemed like a really good pick to me, and I was surprised to find that I was the only one in the whole tournament that had him, and he ended up scoring 2 first-quarter touchdowns and just had a massive game. So that was kind of the real player that set me apart from the rest.
Right. Well, and that's, and as you guys both know, that's a big part of it, is picking players that not many other people are going to pick, so you have an advantage over more people. So Scott, can you describe, or is there any equivalent to the stress level of watching that final and knowing that you're close and literally it's every play you're hanging on? I mean, is there anything like it that you've experienced like that before, or is that pretty much tops?
I would actually say that the qualifier was a lot more stressful than that, only because I ended up winning by a pretty good margin on this. So with about half hour to an hour left, it was pretty much locked up, and it wasn't all that likely that someone was going to come back, because I think I was up by around 20 points, and the only game going on was that anyone really had players going was Tennessee and the Jets, and it was a low-scoring game with not much going on, so I would have needed someone.
You started buying drinks a half hour early, right? I hope you to everyone there.
I would have. Well, for one, I think they had an open bar anyway.
Okay.
So I didn't have to do that. But
that's
but I actually don't even drink, so so I was just drinking water.
There you go. Well, you probably drank a ton of water then.
He was the only sober guy in the room,
yes.
probably.
Right?
It might have been the case, yeah.
Well, so Scott, I mean, and I read a little bit up on you before this. So you've gone completely full-time now on DFS. So why don't you tell our listeners sort of, what's a day in the life of a pro DFS player?
Yeah, well, I would say for me it might be a little bit different than most, only because I really only do football and basketball. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't do baseball. I did try it last year, and I just hadn't followed it in about 20 years or so and tried to get into it, and I think you kind of need to follow it a little more than that in order to be good, so I found that out. So I'm just sticking with football and basketball. So I kind of had a nice time off in the summer, and I was trying to prepare and play a little bit of Olympic basketball and preseason NFL. But for the most part,
degenerate. I understand.
Right. But I mean, I put in a $30 worth of lineups, not really much at all. So I haven't really been playing heavy volume at all. But yeah, for NFL and NBA. I'd say it's not all that time consuming when it's NFL season only. Mm-hmm. I put in 30 to 40 hours a week, I'd say, of analysis, and then I watch, as much of the games as possible. So, watch a whole lot. But once it's football and basketball going on, that's when it really gets busy. And then I'm putting in probably easily 60 plus hours a week of analysis and just making projections, doing lineups, and I don't use any kind of script or algorithm, so I just do all my projections based on my own model that I have, and mm-hmm. A lot of it is just kind of by hand and by what I've seen when I watch the games and things like that.
Well, yeah, and believe me, it's something that many of our listeners are super intrigued by and super interested by, and yeah, whatever tips they can get from a professional big-time winner, I'm sure they appreciate. So, Jason, why don't you tell everyone where they can find the movie and when they can watch it?
Sure. You can head to just perfectlineupmovie.com, and right now we have a bundle with Pro Football Focus that you can get a month of the DFS Pro Lineup Optimizer with the film. So right now it's in pre-order. This weekend it will be it'll go live, and it'll be on iTunes and Amazon as well. And then on Monday we're going to have several other people that are in the film and myself and other people in the crew all watching it together on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, and just watching, tweeting about the movie. You can ask questions anything like that. So, and that'll just be hashtag perfect lineup. So just head over to the website, watch the trailer, send us a link, tell us what you think, and feel free to pre-order or see you on Monday.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Jason and Scott, thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving some folks some advice and your experience and your insight on that. For Scott and Jason, I'm Michael Moore, and this has been another edition of the Fantasy Slant.